And welcome back to Survivor 42 and 42. Just finished Survivor Cagayan. Tony just won. They just showed Tyler Perry. We'll talk all about that. I'm joined by John of Dynamic Character Productions once again. Um, Before I ask you about your opinion on the season, which I already know, but I'm really excited to touch on this one. Something that Jeff said at the finale really stood out to me. He says, for the first time in a long time, everyone came to play. And although I do agree with that, I think that this season, it's not a problem with the season, but this season runs into, I guess, an issue that a lot of the seasons post-season, like 8, run into, where there are a couple of players in the season that know game mechanics and understand certain things, and then there are some that don't. Prime example for this season, Wu doesn't know what happens in a Final Four, and Wu has this perception of bringing Tony to the end because he deserves it rather than bringing Cass, who is perceived as being a goat, but we'll talk about that later. When in reality, most people, if you even have a passing knowledge of the game, would have taken Cass in that situation. But there are other moments in the season where it's like, all right, yeah, I feel like this person maybe seen a season or two. But that's just something that stood out, and I want to get it out of the way before we started with the season. Which, I put in a little description. Does it hold up? Does Survivor Cagayan hold up to you? Go.
Survivor Cagayan always holds up to me. In fact, I like this season more and more every time I watch it. I've probably watched it about 5 times now. This was the season that brought me back to watching Survivor live back when it first aired. I had stopped watching, as a teenager, grew up, got busy, stopped watching Survivor with the family and stuff. Some random Canadian streaming service that no longer exists had a few seasons of Survivor on it. Right after Blood vs. Water was done, I watched Blood vs. Water and fell back in love with Survivor. So Cagayan was the first live season I got to watch again. And I was like, wow, this is really good. A lot of compelling characters, a lot of fierce gameplay. And I denied the fact that it was my favorite season for a very long time until my last rewatch of Cagayan before this weekend. And now I just can't deny it anymore. I love this season all the way through. It has fantastic gameplay. It has downright terrible gameplay. It has just one of the best casts ever assembled for the show. And it's just so interesting to watch the entire way through.
Yes, I agree. I feel like historically, a first-time cast, between this and Australia, Borneo, just because of the amount of people we've had back and how iconic those players are, I feel like Cagayan is the best first-time cast that's ever existed. And we've only had, 4 people come back from us, 4 or 5. The final 4 plus, is that it?
Plus Tasha, plus Sarah.
Plus Sarah. Oh, yeah, Tasha.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 6.
Yeah. So it's a third of the cast.
So, and I feel like that is a testament to this season where, everyone, I do feel like everyone did still in their own way come to play. But you were never bored with this. And I texted you about this earlier. Even the filler episodes have moments where it's like, this is so damn compelling. The Morgan Boot episode is also just happens to be the episode where Spencer finds the clue and is looking for the idol, and then everyone starts looking for the idol. And I sat up in bed to watch it, even though I know how it turns out. And that at the end of that episode, it was like, all right, yeah, the Morgan Boot episode is actually kind of fun. The Jeremiah episode sets up the Jeffrey episode. Just all around, it's just, it probably, by the end of this, it probably still won't be my favorite season, but it might end up passing a few of the returnee seasons that are consistently looked at as the best. And starting from the very beginning, we're now in the phase of corny themes for the show. We're in the corny theme era. And we get, Tony just did the llama sound. We get BBB, the first BBB, and probably the better BBB. How did you, when you first watched the season, how did you feel about how the tribes were divided? Did you think it was corny? Did you think that a specific tribe was going to probably dominate? What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the way these tribes are divided, and they leaned into this theme so much harder than they end up doing in Co Wrong a few years later. They This beauty tribe is just such a stereotypical beauty tribe to the point where the men on this tribe are just like, I can't believe we're doing this. The Brains tribe is just, they look so nerdy, so just outmatched by both the other tribes, especially when you get to the point where David Sampson is like, yeah, our weakest player is Garrett, for sure.
Well, Garrett talks nerdy. I don't even know what that means,
Yeah.
but like listening to him this time, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it.
But yeah, I think this theme, it's one of those themes where it's like, how do you come up with this? But it pays off because these tribes just worked exactly the way they wanted them to. And because we have that kind of collapse of the brain tribes, we get this integration of the tribes when we do get to the swap and to the merge. It just felt it's so much interesting than some of these other like 3 tribes seasons we have later on where the theme just doesn't make sense.
HHH.
Yeah.
Yes, HHH. I do like the way that the tribes are divided. I do think the right people were on the right tribes, whatever that means. But I think the most compelling tribe, the tribe that we see the most, is the Brains tribe. And when you have David Sampson, the president of the Florida Marlins or the Miami Marlins, whatever they were called at this point, you've got Garrett, and you've got all these people. You're looking for people to latch yourself onto. And I feel like of those 6, Tasha was probably the most sane on that OG tribe. Therefore, the person that I latched onto the most is like, all right, just as long as it's not Tasha, we can kind of start getting rid of some of these folks. Cass eventually became my favorite player in the entire season. Mm-hmm. But we'll get to that. So the Brain tribe, they're not very good. Garrett tells Jatia about her being voted out. She pours out the rice, but it's played for laughs this time as compared to last time we saw that. Thank goodness. Tasha talks about how she wants to play the game. She doesn't want to sit around and do this whole kumbaya. Everyone just talks about, how the vote's going to go. Do you think that if Garrett had just shut his mouth, Garrett could have gone farther? And what do you think behind the concept of telling people that they're going home in this age of Survivor?
What a great question, because first off, you can't tell someone they're going home. Okay, Garrett can here because he has the idol. So he knows that the chance of Jatia having an idol is so slim because we've never seen like multiple idols on the same pre-merge tribe before at this point. So I get where Garrett's coming from. I still think it's a terrible idea because it leads to people pouring rice on the fire. But at the same time, like, I don't think Tasha was ever cool with the idea of going down and having Spencer and Garrett kind of run the show on this tribe. So I don't know if Garrett just let conversation happen naturally, survives this vote. Probably, because I think at this point they really do just need challenge strength. So Garrett probably survives, but there's still that potential that he does still go in this position, mainly because he may be one of the worst Survivor players of all time.
Where do you put him?
I'm pretty sure he is. He might be in my bottom 10.
Wow. Okay. He finds an idol. But no, I think that the most important part of that entire tribal is one of the first, if not the first, cast flip of the season. Mm-hmm. And that is her storyline. And it's funny because, if we jump ahead to when her husband comes out and she's talking about how she's going to be perceived by the jury, and if I was a male, people would be hyping me up for my moves. And other people are saying that she's not playing a smart game. It's like, I feel like she is, and I do feel like she's right with the whole male-female thing, because she's basically doing the exact same thing that Tony's doing. Yeah. She's doing the exact same thing that, even if we go as far back as Rob Cesternino and Amazon. She's doing this over and over. I think the only difference is she's doing it and also antagonizing people. And I think that's what may have cost her in the end if she had played, is the fact that people felt bitter towards her because of how she was perceived to have treated them. And, but we get the first Cass flip. So what were your thoughts on Cass this season? You can talk as much as you want about her from beginning to end. But what were your thoughts on her? Because she was my favorite player in the season.
I love Cass. I think Cass is one of the greatest villains Survivor's ever had. I think she was correct when she said if she was a man making these moves, she would be praised for them. And it's kind of one of the biggest problems we have in the Survivor fandom, where people don't respect female players who play this aggressively. She was a phenomenal player, and I think if she sits at the end against Wu, she probably wins, despite what happens in the finale when Jeff polls the jury and everyone says they unanimously vote Wu. I don't believe that one bit. Yeah. I think Cass just showed an aptitude for the game that was really smart. Her ability to make decisions in tribal council may be unrivaled when it comes to Survivor players. And to communicate that decision with other people. It's an uncanny talent that can propel you so far in this game.
Well, and her rationale for almost every flip and every decision she makes sense. And the funny thing is, let's say she comes in as sweet older woman. Now the perception is, oh, she hasn't done anything, so we can't vote for her. And it's like it is a gender thing, but the fact that she can play super aggressively and be looked at as a goat, when if she plays the exact opposite, we still look at her as a goat, and there's got to be a fine line there. And I do feel like the hardcore fans, the non-casuals, respect Cass for what she is. She's a great villain, but she's also a smart game player. She understands how it works. She knows when to jump ship. She understands that these people are probably going to drag her along because they think that she can beat them. And she knows how to, and this is one of my favorite moments, she knows how to provoke Tony, who is one of, if not the most, not the most paranoid player, one of the most paranoid players to have ever played the game. And it's so funny watching him in his moments where he's not, fun-loving Tony that's, out having fun. It's, he's going off on Cass, and he's going off on Spencer, and he's going off on all these people. The vote where he got like 2 or 3 votes, and he's like, why do you guys keep voting for me? It's like, yeah, they have him frazzled. And Cass saw that and took advantage and started, messing with him. So I feel like Cass was, on a cast of so many amazing characters, for me, as a non-biased, Cass is probably top 3 characters in the season for me. But I feel like they got it right with putting her on the second chance ballot. If they were ever to do a Heroes vs. Villains 2, I would feel like she would have to be a shoe-in for one of the female villains. Age-wise, I don't know where she's at this point. But Cass just, and her confessionals are so, it feels like she's talking to you. And I know that's the point of confessionals, but for me, it does feel like she's sitting down and talking to me as an audience member. She's very captivating. I'll say it like that. So we go along with the pre-merge. We swap. They finally get rid of Jatia, and we end up in a situation where Tony really wants Cliff gone. He started planting seeds in Sarah's mind earlier. What did you think of the initial season of Cops R Us? And I know before we went live, you said this is the best version of Sarah, in your opinion. Why is that?
Sarah's just not really annoyingly a cop in this season. She talks about it more than any other season, but it kind of seems to take like a backseat to the way she's playing the game and stuff. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that like Tony just betrays her early enough in this season.
She doesn't overstay her welcome.
Yeah, she doesn't overstay her welcome. I don't know. I'm watching her on the Challenge USA right now, and I still can't stand her. But rewatching her in Cagayan, it's just like, I don't mind Sarah on this season. No. And her downfall is so hilarious because she plays this merge so bad.
Yes, she's basically, and not even like she's being cagey for cagey. She's actually telling people like, I'm gonna have to make my decision at tribal. It's like, that's probably the worst thing you want to tell people, especially when you're the swing vote in a two-man power. I don't know how to describe this. It's late. You don't tell these people that, oh, I'll make my decision up at that point. Now, her actual alliance was silly enough to still keep her around, but it didn't work out in the end. She goes home. But yeah, I feel like she very much went into that merge on her high horse, and I feel like Cass, in her infinite wisdom, and that's not sarcasm, saw the writing on the wall. Was like, all right, let's just go ahead, jump ship. I want Sarah gone. These people don't trust Sarah anymore. Let's get rid of her. And this is actually the beginning of this Cass Trish friendship that somehow by the penultimate episode turns into like this utter hate for each other, which is we'll touch on that in a bit. But like a lot of the merge is Cass, Jeffra, and Trish like consoling each other. Trish and Cass defending Jeffra at two tribal councils when Tony's like, well, you didn't trust me. And they're like, well, she didn't trust you because of this. They're like mothers for Jeffra in the situation. And all of a sudden, at the final five, it becomes Trish versus Cass. And it comes out of nowhere to the point where Cass flips her off on the way out the door. So, first question, do you think there were other things, obviously, that were not shown that this was kind of a buildup, or do you think that, Trish overhearing Cass talk about her being malnourished, kind of just set her off and wanted to go after Cass? But after you answer that one, two, thoughts on the Trish-Tony dynamic?
Okay, so I don't know. I think hearing someone that late in the game bring up someone who you think is a very close ally, bring up your name as hey, you got to take Trish out because she's preventing you from getting to the final three. I think that is enough for someone to flip out like that, especially, 36 days in, like you said, completely malnourished. She's barely eaten at all. I think it might be enough. Sure, there could be something that happened behind the scenes that we didn't know about. But even the episode prior, all the women are together, like, laughing it up. So I think it might just be that one moment where Trish is like, I have to respond to this somehow because I don't want to get voted out. And it just kind of backfires on her. In regards to the Tony Trish dynamic, I think they were genuinely just best friends out there. I think they connected more than anyone else on that season. I think Tony having to vote Trish out was probably the hardest decision for him in the game. And I think Trish's very heated final tribal council question, I think that was to set Tony up to ensure the win.
Yes.
Because I don't think there was any malice coming from Trish at all in that. While it seems like it, and I mean, that's the theatrics of final tribal council and everything. I think like the reason why Trish cuts him off and just demands that one word answer is because she just wants to show that Tony was willing to lie to get to the end.
Yes. And I feel like they're a very underrated duo, which is crazy to say because of how high this season is on a lot of people's list. The fact that people don't really talk about the Tony Trish dynamic, but I feel like the Tony Trish dynamic, like Tony does not win if he does not have Trish there putting out his fires, as she says. She is very much keeping him safe in a lot of these situations where people should be flipping on him. So the fact that, and I agree, voting her out, you can even see it on his face that he didn't want to do this. And I do believe that it was Wu's move. Wu does convince Tony to do it. They're talking to Tyler Perry right now about his idol. And if we want to just quickly go on a little side quest right now.
Yeah.
You can't give Tyler Perry credit for something that already existed for 3 seasons, two seasons. It existed for 2 seasons. Right? Yeah, Panama and Cook Islands.
And Cook Islands, yeah.
So they're giving all this hype to Tyler Perry. He's talking about how he came up with the idea. So go back to making Medea movies. Back to Cagayan. We hit the merge. Sarah goes home. Tony is very quickly sussed out as the leader of this alliance, along with LJ. And I know that LJ has a large fandom. LJ really drops the ball in the episode that he goes because Tasha's just like, just come talk. You might not even agree with what I have to say, but just come talk. And LJ just leaves her out to dry. And I feel like, yeah, well, in that case, you definitely have to go because Tony's just going to come in and take us and go get you out. So what did you think of LJ in the season? Do you think that in an alternate universe, if he had just gone and talked to Tasha, that we would have seen a little bit more of him, or do you think that he was always destined to eventually leave?
I do like LJ. I do think he has a very good social game, I think, and his integration into that group of the Braun when there is the swap, I think he plays that really well. I think the fact that he like connects with Trish about both being from Massachusetts right away, obviously he sees that, he jumps on it right away. It's the correct play. He shows that he has game sense. I forgot that this moment where he just doesn't talk to Tasha happens, and it is absolutely one of the worst gameplay moves he could possibly make there. And the reasoning behind it was Tony's already paranoid, so me going to talk to her is only going to make him want to vote me out. Well, sorry, LJ, but he's already planning on voting you out, so you probably should have had this conversation.
And I mean, hindsight and all that, but yeah, I feel like that's the moment where I'm like, all right, this guy is who everyone's hyping up to be like one of the more underrated players. When in reality, I feel like he was rated perfectly. I think he was, like you said, a great social player. He was at the top of that beauty tribe. Everyone loved him. When they got to that swap tribe, him and Jeffra were really never in any type of real trouble. It was him and Jeffra, right? Yeah, it was him and Jeffra. And then at the merge, it was just, he falls for Tony's trick, which is fine. Everyone's falling for Tony's tricks. That's not a huge deal. Him not talking to Tasha is the death nail for him, because I do feel like if him and Tasha had gotten that crew together, they could have potentially put out a hit on Tony. But much like everyone else's season, they just either tried it too late or they just are convinced that Tony is a potential GOAT, which is wild to me because you have people saying this, but you also have those same people saying Tony's going to win if he gets to the end. It's like, well, what you have to stick to one of these narratives. You can't just keep saying both because it's going to put weird thoughts on these actual GOATs' heads. Basically, woo. Going back to the pre-merge real quick, there are two players that I really feel like were more strategic than I remembered them being, and they were just more fun characters. Bryce and Alexis. And I felt so hard for Alexis when she got voted out because you could tell that she really wanted. It's almost like Allie randomly in Caramon, where it's like, wow, I really liked Allie this time, even though I don't remember who you are. Alexis, I remember everyone in Cagayan. It's very hard to forget any of these people. And I just forgot the way, she got voted out and how emotional, I guess, it made me feel. But I felt so bad for her, especially because Morgan stayed. And there's nothing wrong with Morgan. But on this season, I think LJ said it best. You prefer cute over hot. This season really didn't need hot people. I'll say it like that. This season didn't need hot people. She did her job, though. So some of these other people on the cast, we've talked about some of the big names. We're going to talk about more of them a little bit later. But who are some of these maybe pre-mergers, early mergers that you really latched onto this time around?
I really do like this beauty tribe at first. I've always been this weird like Jeffra fan, despite the fact that she does nothing. I like her.
And Jeremiah has a cool accent.
Yeah, but can we talk about how dumb this beauty tribe is? Because in the episode where Bryce gets voted out, they split the votes here 2-2-2 after Bryce and Morgan tell them Jeremiah's voting with them. They easily could have just voted themselves out of the game here with this split for no reason. And no one thinks that. It's like, oh, they say they have 3 votes, so we should split our votes 2-2. It baffles me how poor. But again, that's one of the great things about Cagayan is because we have this terrible gameplay mixed with this fantastic gameplay.
When you have this tribe, you have the beauty tribe who, the only gameplay we see is that one tribal because they never have to go back. But you're like, okay, this tribe might be in some trouble if they ever end up in another situation. And every beauty tribe member that gets voted out, except for maybe Jeremiah and Alexis, I'll put Alexis. The other three do things that ultimately cause their demise instead of just being on the wrong side of the numbers.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard. Like I think there's one dud on this season as the person who ends up quitting the game.
Lindsay. We're still in the Lindsay doesn't make merge era of Survivor.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about it. I wonder if Lindsay doesn't quit here, does Alexis go home at that tribal council? I just want, because if you think about it, that's two brawn gone all of a sudden, and the beauties have the majority out of all of the tribes then. I wonder if that's why all of a sudden they're going after Jeremiah Alexis in this vote.
Instead of, yeah. Well, and my other thing is, this is one of the first times, I think that there was another moment, some earlier season, where someone quits and it doesn't seem like Jeff is like overly pissed off. It's just like, oh yeah, you're not, you have like 2 confessionals so far. You can go home. But I did respect Lindsay's reasoning, I guess, of I might kill this person, so you might want to take me off the show. It's like, yeah, understandable.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll just take it this way. But yes, I would say that if there were a dud, it would probably be her because everyone else delivers, and even her rivalry with Trish is fun for what it is. So everyone, plays their role well. Tasha winning 3 immunities in a row, everyone's seeing her as this physical threat. And a very appealing final tribal for me would be a Spencer versus Tasha situation because they would have had the exact same storyline. They've been together since the beginning, and Tasha would have had potentially more immunity wins than him at that point. I know she gets voted at final 6, so there's a lot of things that could have happened. But I do feel like that would have been a very you start thinking about how a season can even be better or worse depending on what it is. Yeah. And I feel like with this one, you start fantasy booking different scenarios with different people at the end. And I know everyone always goes with the Cass Wu thing. I know we've already talked about the Cass Wu thing, but even like a Tony versus Spencer, I think is a lot closer than people may have thought at the time. I do think that Tony would have been able to convince them of certain to get certain votes. So what are some of your like I keep saying fancy booking, but certain scenarios that you imagine playing out in the season that you would have wanted to see play out? Or
so here's my big question. Is this season only a final 2 because of the Lindsay quit?
Interesting.
I never thought of it before until rewatching it this weekend. And I was like, usually like a quit like this does something to the game. It messes up. I mean, as someone who produces online games, someone having to leave all of a sudden can mess up all of your planning and you have to like change things all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And we know with fans versus favorites, like with Micronesia, the injuries led to it being a surprise final 2. I wonder if Cagayan was supposed to be a final 3 as well. Because the last final 2 we had seen before this was Token Jeans, right?
Token Jeans, yeah.
So like we had really been done with final 2s at this point. So it's weird that this one became a final 2.
Yeah, and Spencer's credit, once again, he clocked it not very fast, at least on screen, but he clocked it as this is going to be a final 2, Tony. Like, yeah.
Speaking of which, can we talk about how lucky Tony was this was a final 2? Because all of a sudden, it being a final 2 gives credibility to his lie about his idol being good until final 4.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it wasn't a final 2, no one believes that.
No. Tony, and I forgot how amazing he actually. I always remember like the chaotic Tony of like how is this Jamoke like making it this far? I know he's making these moves, but like someone's got to do something at some point. But I forget that like he's playing these people that are actually smart. It's not like he's Kim You know, in one world, it's not like he's Rob in Redemption Island. Like these people have a grasp on a lot of the things in the game, but paranoia is a hell of a drug. And this guy saying, "My bag of tricks, I'll show you this at this point, I'll show you this at this point, I'll allude to something," that puts a lot of stuff in your head. And the fact that he gets no votes at Final Four when, you know, in reality, as especially Spencer being like this, being the Spence bot, he should have caught on to the fact that, hey, maybe if this is a final two, it still shouldn't matter because this has never happened. This special idol has never happened. So Tony played a very dominant game based off the cast that he was playing with. I don't think it's the most dominant game. I actually don't even think it's his most dominant game, but I do feel like he was able to play these people, and it wasn't just a bunch of jabronis that don't know what they're doing. It's playing against people that actually know what they're doing, plus Morgan and Jeremiah. And I'll throw in Jeffra kind of, but I did think that Jeffra had some thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it really comes down to is, like Jeff says in the finale, these are people who are here to play. And despite the fact that some of them had more game knowledge than the rest, they were all there to play. They all were going hard the entire time because it never felt, and I mean, yes, part of this is because Tony's flip-flopping all over the place and using the strategy of voting one from his alliance and one out from the other side. But this feels like a much more fluid season than one that really is just two alliances sticking together the entire time.
Yeah. And one person jumping back and forth. Like it's as I was watching this, it reminded me a lot of the Amazon, where it's just, there are these two alliances and there's this person jumping back and forth and they keep letting him do it. And the only difference is idols didn't exist at that point. So there was no idol paranoia, because I do feel like if they did exist, Rob could have potentially lied his way to the end at that point and potentially wins. But that's, that's a few weeks ago at this point.
Yeah.
That kept popping in my mind on this rewatch is, wow, Tony's, people say, oh, Tony is like just a better version of Russell Hanson. I'm like, well, no. If anything, he's on par with Sesternino as far as being able to read the room, realize that even if I do jump ship for this vote, these people will hate me, but they still realize I'm their guy and they can't and also they can beat me at the end because I burned so many people. And he's getting cussed out by people and people are going off on him and he's sitting there and taking it. And it's just like Jenna and Heidi going off on Rob when Alex gets voted out. The parallels were like crazy this time around as far as that. And they're like the hot people too. So Tony goes to the end. Tony is against Wu. And while we were watching it, they're all asking Tony the same question. And this time around, it finally clicked to me. It's like, oh yeah, they all plan on voting for Tony anyway. So let's just make them sweat for a little bit, and then let's vote for him, and we can all go home happy. Do you think that if Wu had been more, I don't know, anything at Final Judge, he could have potentially gotten other votes? Or do you think it was wrapped up soon as he wrote down Cass's name?
I think there's a point in the final three tribal council where Jeff asked Wu a question and Wu's just like, hey, let's just vote. I think if Wu had taken the time to explain his thought process at that moment, he could have, I wouldn't say win the game, he could have garnered more than one vote, though.
More respect. I think that's what it is. It's like, I feel like, yes, these people do prefer Wu over Tony, but they don't respect it. And he went in there and he told this story. And Cagayan Final 2 is one of my go-to defenses when people talk about bitter juries and people telling sob stories at the end, as far as you're wrong, because Wu does tell a sob story at the end and doesn't win. And this jury is very bitter towards Tony, and he still wins. So anyone that, likes to sit there and say, oh, well, these people can't win because these people were never going to win because the jury was pissed off and this, that, and the other. It's like, well, no, jury's still they're not brain dead. They still hear what these people are saying, and they're still making judgment calls based off what these people are saying and how they perceive them in the game. So, everyone's saying, oh, Jeremy swept because he cried, and Adam swept because he cried, and, Natalie White won because the jury was bitter. It's like, well, all of that, there's probably some fact to it, but also, we have a prime case right here where all of that stuff happens and the bad guy in the situation still wins. So I'm assuming that you would vote for Tony in this situation. I feel like most people would vote for Tony in this situation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would definitely vote for Tony here.
In a Cass Tony situation, do you feel like it's still that easy, or do you think that Cass, being a lawyer, could pull out 4-ish votes?
Okay, so we need to address the elephant in the room, and the reason why everyone's saying Cass is a goat the entire time, and that is because at the merge, that tribe that Cass was originally on, the Swap tribe, they made an agreement that if anyone flipped on that vote, they would not get any votes in final tribal council. It's not something we see in the season. We definitely have confirmation this agreement was made. It's why Spencer says Cass 0 chance of winning at that merged tribal council. Cass is a litigator with a 100% record. She will talk circles around absolutely anyone she is with there. Tony's also very well spoken, so I don't know if she could take enough votes away from Tony to get the win, but I wouldn't say it's impossible.
She definitely talks circles around Wu.
But Wu, I don't think Wu stood a chance against Cass, because even with that agreement, and if there were some people who were going to stick to it, I think Cass could easily get at least half of those people's votes.
Yes, because and that's so unfortunate, because Wu is a fun character this season. Mm-hmm. He gives fun confessionals. He comes off as, Cass describes him as Fabio. He is very much this dude bro character. Not someone that you expect to make it to the end, but like we have precedent already from 7 seasons-ish beforehand. But when you put him against non-Chase Rice and Sash, he's going to have a harder time getting those votes. And you feel for Wu, especially at the reunion, when as the votes are starting to get read, you look at his face and he already he knows it's over. And you feel horrible for him, because I don't think maybe Jeffra or Jeremiah, that's how far into the merge you would have to go to find someone that he could potentially stand a chance against. And in my opinion, I feel like no one in the top 6, he's not beating anyone in the top 6. No. And yeah, maybe those 2 are the only 2 that he would have a chance in. And it sucks because he is such a lovable character on the season, and it seems like everyone loves him, but this was not the season to be the lovable character.
No, because I think what it comes down to, I think Jeff said everyone's playing the game. I think the big thing is everyone here respected the game. And that's the big difference that this season has to a lot of other seasons. Other seasons with accused bitter juries and stuff like that. Everyone here respects the game. Even if we compare this to the bitter jury in All Stars, where that was all personal.
Yes.
This is an instance where these jurors definitely felt hurt by Tony. They definitely felt like Tony betrayed them, but they still respected the hustle Tony put into the game. And if you have a jury full of people who respect the game, you can't just be the guy who coasts his way to the end and is the likable guy. You have to also back that up with gameplay receipts. And I think Wu really needed to play up his answer to Tasha's question in Final Tribal Council, where she asked, why did you saddle up to Tony so much? And Wu's like, I was on the outs until Cliff got voted out. Then I knew I had to. But I don't think he goes into depth enough to explain why that was good for his game.
Yes. Because he didn't play for the bottom as much as Spencer and Tasha did, but he was playing for the bottom. He gets blindsided, twice early on, maybe once. Was it just the cliff vote?
I think it's just the cliff vote. Yeah.
Okay, so he's blindsided with that, and he is very much on the bottom. And then once Lindsay's gone, he is dead man
By himself.
He says that, and
Yep.
all of a sudden he goes from Weasel Woo to in the majority alliance to Tony's going to keep me over Trish, who is his number one.
Mhm.
All of those things I feel like he should have leaned, like you said, leaned in a lot more with. And yes, probably still loses, but it shows the game awareness. It shows I know I was on the bottom and I found my way to somehow sitting here, and Tony's biggest ally and probably second biggest ally sitting over there. Cass has a lot of confessionals this season where she says, I know I'm on the bottom, but people want to, what was the exact phrasing? Her initial alliance like abandoned her in favor of Sarah, as compared to her new alliance where she's still on the bottom, but these people are catering to her. They're basically asking, who do you want next, Cass? She's like, oh, I want this person next. So that just once again shows the awareness that Cass has over Wu, but also just shows how great Cass is as a game player. We've come full circle. We're talking about Cass again.
Always.
Other things about this, as we start to wrap up, some of the other things that stood out to you for the season, you already said this is your favorite. What is it about Cagayan besides the characters, the blind sides, the winner, the cast? This time around, whose eyes did you watch it through this time?
Whose eyes did I watch it through this time? Yeah. Tony's, in all honesty, because this is my first time revisiting Cagayan since Winners at War.
Okay.
Maybe it's the second. And even when we were talking, when we were messaging each other earlier, you were talking about how Tony has a lot of confessionals, and I didn't realize that until watching it again this weekend. Tony has a lot of confessionals in this season.
I think 90 something.
Yeah, but even then, the way the editing in this season is shaped, you can't believe a guy like Tony's going to win. And it's not because he's unlikable, because he's showing that he's likable, even as it gets further into the merge, and it seems like he's, making people more upset, and he's getting short-tempered with some people. He seems too erratic, but he is so calculated. And I think there's the moment in the reunion where he's talking about the fact that he's not sleeping and he's going over his game at night. And I think the fact that that's just something you can't really show really helps with this ability to edit it, because I think if they show that calculated side of Tony, I don't think this season works as well.
Because then we know he's going to win. There's still some thoughts in our head with the edit that we get that this crazy guy's not going to win. He's going to cut it third, and everyone's going to call him the robbed king or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you see that he's strategizing, then it's oh yeah, duh.
Yeah. And so I think the editing has a big part of it. There are so many votes where you're not 100% sure what's going to happen. If we go back to the David Sampson vote, you're not 100% sure it's David going. The Garrett vote, you don't know. The Bryce vote, you don't know. That's the first 3 votes of the season, and you're still not 100% sure who's going home. You even get the attempt to throw the challenge to get Cliff out. And kind of sucks that the end part of that challenge, which is generally where you want to be throwing something, is the one place where you can't justify not having Cliff play in that position.
Yeah.
But editing that and just emphasizing how bad the brain tribe is there. The merge boot. This episode is one of the best episodes of Survivor. And it has all these great moments where they intentionally, they mentioned Jeffra's name pretty early on as the target. And then and then Sarah comes in and bulldozes her way to be no, it has to be either Tony or LJ. And they emphasize that so much in the edit that when Tony plays his idol for LJ and then LJ plays his idol for Tony, you're oh man, this is huge. And then that Jeffra vote comes out. And it's edited so well It keeps you on the edge of your seat. It helps that we get moments like Wu winning the final 3 immunity, and that you're on the edge of your seat, so that when Wu votes out Cash, you're like, oh my god, I can't believe he just did that. It helps that we have like this crazy editing of like the idol hunt in the Morgan Boot episode, where we get just people running through the jungle. This is one of the best edited seasons of Survivor, which is crazy to say in a season where one person has over 90 confessionals.
Yes. I Samoa, this is not.
No.
Samoa, this is not. When I'm not getting annoyed, and this is a testament to Tony as well. When I'm not getting annoyed by like, oh god, here's another Tony confessional. Oh god, like how many confessions is this guy gonna get? Where every character, for the most part at the merge. I feel like the people that we don't really learn much about at the merge are Jeremiah, Morgan, and Jeffra, but they still have moments where they still have fun moments at the merge. Jeremiah coming out as a model, Jeffra getting her letter from her family and saying, yeah, this might be the moment to turn, and then doesn't. And then Morgan. You have these moments where you care about these people. You want to see all of these people come back. And I would say there are pre-mergers from this season where it's like, yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing this person play again. And that I feel that is the overall testament to this game to this season is you care about, if not everyone, the large majority of them. And I feel like besides Australian Outback, as far as Australian Outback, you don't get a season like that again until maybe David versus Goliath, where I can probably name everyone but one. There was one person on there whose name I always forget. And that is a testament. So me personally, I'm giving it 4.75 out of 5. I can't give it the 5, mainly because the final tribal council is actually kind of boring except for Trish's question, which in my head, I always remember it as being a lot worse than it actually is. She is really just trying to get him to say something. But the final tribal council is really boring because it's not like other tribals where it's like, okay, maybe this might happen. Maybe Wu might win. It's like, well, no. Tony's absolutely winning this. These people are going to ask him the same question, like you said, and we're just going to get to the reunion. So 4.75. I don't care about the quit. The quit happens, whatever.
It's so inconsequential in the end.
Yeah. And I know I've talked about this a lot, and I haven't talked about it in a while because something like this hasn't happened on a good season. But this season, the one of the greatest things about the season is it overcomes a quit. Much like Pearl Islands overcomes a quit and a returnee twist, much like Blood versus Water overcomes a returnee twist. If the season is good enough, people will just kind of block out that kind of stuff. And every time I watch the season, I see Lindsay, I'm like, oh, yeah, her. She's the one that quit. Oh, well, we'll get to that, and then we'll be done with it. And I feel like that is just going along with what you had said. That's what makes the season so great is you care. And it makes this season makes you want to care. And going into the next season where the gameplay is not as good, the characters are still very fun, but it's more Gabon-esque as far as characters than Cagayan-esque. And it's fun for we've reverted back to Gabon One World type casting with our next season, which is Blood versus Water 2 San Juan del Sur. I'm actually really excited to watch this season because I do feel like it's one of those seasons that is like, oh, this is so stupid, but I'm going to make it through because there's nothing. John Rocker is there. John, final thoughts as we bounce.
Cagayan kind of is this season that gets highly praised all the time. And it feels like a season that people don't pinpoint why. And I feel like it's kind of the end of an era that we kind of forget was going on at the time. Because we have Samoa where everyone's finding idols, where Russell's finding idols without clues and stuff. These Cagayan idols are impossible to find without clues. And I think that is where we start getting this shift after this. I guess it's more like towards second chance, but this is like the last one where we have these big idol hunts. And that's another reason why this season is so good, is because it doesn't feel like it's inundated by the fact that someone finds 3 idols. It doesn't feel like it's inundated because one person gets 90 plus confessionals. It's a season that is just constructed well. It's a season where production clearly trusted their cast. And it's a season that deserves the hype it gets.
Yep. Every time I rewatch the season, it's always like, all right, is this actually overrated? Like, now that I've been removed from it enough, let's try it this time. And every single time, it's just like, yep, this is actually very good. I can't sit here and try to, be on the opposition with it. A contrarian. This season is as good as it's been made out to be. I understand that people don't want to like Tony now because cop, but I don't care, because Endgame, he is very fun to watch. And I'm excited to see Tony 3.0 and 10 days. Is it 10 days already? No, 11 days.
You were a little further away.
Yeah, 11-ish days. But thank you all for tuning in. Thank you to John. We're going to put the link once again to the DCP and this and the YouTube description. But please go follow them on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, obviously. And John, I think that's a wrap on you for this, right?
It is, yep.
Right. But we'll see John hopefully again for 42. I'll talk to you about it after we go end. But I'll see you all after San Juan.